The fall season invokes beautiful colors of yellow, red, and brown as foliage begins to wane from its season-long vibrancy. This time of year also brings with it thoughts of preparation for both fall and winter activities. Among these is the beloved observance of Halloween. Children and adults alike find great joy in the Halloween festivities, and they anticipate dressing up in an array of costumes that are both appealing and repulsive. But is Halloween something you should observe? Where did the traditions of Halloween come from? Why the dark imagery with dominant themes of evil and death? Would changing the traditional theme to something more conservative make Halloween acceptable to Christians? To find out the answer to these questions, stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, is Halloween a respectable holiday? Is it something you and your family should observe? Where did the Halloween traditions come from? Why the themes of ghosts, skeletons, vampires, monsters, and witchcraft? Well, to answer these questions, we need only to examine the documented ancient history of Halloween, which dates back all the way to Celts, who inhabited much of Europe in the 6th century BC. These people were quite superstitious and practiced various forms of pagan religion. Their heathen priests were known as Druids, and they observed the waning sun of fall, along with the corresponding decline of vibrancy in vegetation, and they linked this natural process to the cold of a seemingly lifeless, wintry grave. Their superstitious pagan culture resulted in rituals and traditions that were far from holy. A number of years ago, Reader's Digest did extensive research on this subject, and they wrote this. October 31st, the eve of November 1st, was the last night of the year in the ancient Celtic calendar and was celebrated as the end of summer and its fruitfulness. It was a festival that the Celts of Northern Europe marked with bonfires to help the sun through the winter. Winter also called to mind the chill and blackness of the grave, and so it was a time when they believed ghosts would walk and supernatural spirits, warlocks, and witches would hold their revels. A focal point of the rites of Celts during this time of year was evil spirits and mystical creatures such as ghosts, ghouls, and goblins. The observance became known as Samhain, a word meaning summer's end. However, this expression soon turned into the name for an evil spirit they called Lord of the Dead. Historian Ralph Linton wrote this. The American celebration of Halloween rests upon Scottish and Irish folk customs which can be traced in direct line from pre-Christian times. Although Halloween has become a night of frolicking fun, superstitious spells, and eerie games that people take only half seriously, its beginnings were quite otherwise. The earliest Halloween celebrations were held by the Druids in honor of Samhain, Lord of the Dead, whose festival fell on November 1st. Though many now jest during the festivities of modern Halloween celebrations, to the Druids and Celts these ancient rituals were no laughing matter. They involved elements of terror, death, and reverence for wicked spirits they believed roamed the earth at this time of year in order to create havoc and even to possess the living. Why, notice what historian Gladys Spicer wrote. To ancient Druids, the end of October commemorated the festival of the waning year, when the sun began his downward course and ripened grain was garnered from the fields. Samhain, or Summer's End, as this feast to the dying sun was called, was celebrated with human sacrifice, augury, and prayers. For at this season spirits walked, and evil had power over souls of men. The depraved ceremonies of ancient pagans contained ideas about supposed activities of witches, warlocks, and wandering spirits. Divination and enchantments continued to dominate the activities even after the observances morphed into what we know today as Halloween. In fact, modern-day neo-pagans and Wiccans claim that October 31st and November 1st is their most sacred time of the year. Why, notice what one Wiccan website states. Samhain is the most important holy night of the year. It is believed to be the evening in which the veil between the realm of the living and the dead is thinnest, allowing members of the spirit realm to walk the earth in great numbers. The association with spirits of the dead walking the earth is probably the basis for the modern Halloween's emphasis on ghosts and goblins. The jack-o'-lantern, a still popular decoration, is derived from the image used by ancient pagans to keep unwelcome spirits from the hearth during the celebration. Calls to your ancestors and loved ones for assistance is appropriate for those practicing spell work on this day. In addition to this quote, notice what a Wiccan minister stated about this modern neo-pagan observance of Halloween. For Wiccans, this is a very powerful time of year. Summer's End, Samhain, or Halloween, is the new year. It is a time to connect with the deceased loved ones and their wisdom as they do continue on behind the veil. It is a tradition to set up altars with pumpkins, apples, and squash, along with a skull, which is a symbol of physical passage. So we see that those who claim to be modern-day witches and pagans are quite aware of the truth about Halloween. They know that it came from the Celtic Samhain traditions. And because of this, they continue to passionately remain connected with Halloween's ancient symbols and rituals. And so we see it truly takes little effort to discover that this morbid gala has a long history of bizarre beliefs and heathen ritual. But the question many ask is, how did Samhain become Halloween? And why do so many people, even many who claim to be Christian, now embrace the modern observance by carving pumpkins and costuming and going door-to-door trick-or-treating? Unbeknownst to most celebrants, the alteration of Samhain to Halloween came through a religious organization that claimed to be Christian. Why, Halloween is actually pronounced Halloween, which means a hollow evening. In other words, the word Halloween is defined as a holy evening. But when we consider the former and also the current activities of Halloween, how could anyone consider this celebration to be holy? Well, the answer is explained in the Encyclopedia of Superstitions, where Edwin and Mona Radford wrote this. Halloween is a survival of a much earlier pagan feast, in this case the pagan festival of the dead. The early Christian church, unable to suppress it and keep their converts, connived at it, but gave to it a religious turn. Samhain was widely observed throughout Europe for centuries, even before Christianity. After the ministry, crucifixion, and resurrection of the Messiah, the Christian faith began to spread. Now, one sect that branched off from true Christianity became known as the Roman Catholic Church, and this organization strived to convert the masses. And their efforts included adopting pagan holidays and attempting to make them Christian observances by changing names and altering the rituals and redefining the pagan symbols. Franklin Douglass noted this practice in his work titled The American Book of Days, where he wrote, "The mystic rites and ceremonies with which Halloween was originally observed had their origin among the Druids centuries before the dawn of the Christian era in their celebration on the eve of the festival of Samhain. The early Christian church adopted the eve and the day following and gave new names to them, as it did with many other non-Christian observances." So the general practice of the developing Holy Roman Empire was to proselytize as many people as possible, no matter what their background. The Emperor Constantine claimed to have a divine vision, and he quickly made Christianity the official religion of the empire. However, his form of Christianity was far from that taught by Christ and the apostles. Constantine was a devout pagan who revered the sun as a god, and he presumptuously changed the seventh-day Sabbath to worshiping on Sunday, which he called the venerable day of the sun. Many other pagan traditions were soon appropriated for use in order to encourage conversion among the masses. Christmas, Lent, Easter, and many other holidays were never sanctioned by Christ or the apostles, but were simply whitewashed pagan celebrations. Regarding Halloween, consider what historian Ralph Linton wrote in his extensive work.
All Saints' Day, Halloween, was introduced into the church calendar. The day chosen was one already associated in the popular mind with a thronging of spirits of the dead, which was quite in line with church policy of incorporating harmless pagan folk ideas.
Although the practice of incorporating pagan ideas by the Catholic Church may have become common, it is far from harmless, and it was never sanctioned by the New Testament Church. Today, Halloween is celebrated on All Hallows' Eve, on the evening prior to All Saints' Day. Now, All Saints' Day is supposedly a day to honor dead saints, and isn't it interesting that this church chose to honor their dead saints on the same day pagans long honored Samhain, the Lord of the Dead? Although this observance was adopted by the Catholic Church, it was retained by Protestants, and it eventually spread all around the world. Despite the transfer of Samhain to Halloween, the connection we see is clear. Halloween is the same holiday celebrated by ancient Celts and even Wiccans and neo-pagans of today. As the researchers for Reader's Digest noted, like Christmas and Easter, the festival of Halloween originated in a pagan celebration. Even though its name is derived from the Christian festival All Hallows or All Saints' Eve, only since the late 18th and early 19th centuries has Halloween developed into a festive time for children with costumes, lanterns, and games. Before then, it was regarded as a night of fear, and wise men stayed indoors. Today, most think that Halloween is simply harmless, good fun and games. But it's far from good, and it is truly not harmless. Why, Halloween is a tribute to evil, and those who celebrate it have yet to know the perilous times that will come. And you need to know more about this subject, and you can know more. To help you, Quest for Truth has written a free and informative booklet. The Eternal Church of God produces a variety of free literature to help people understand the perils of the world today and the great hope of the world to come. At this time, we would like to offer you the booklet titled The Truth About Halloween. It will explain how Samhain, a once dreaded time of year, evolved into our modern-day Halloween celebration. Our booklet will tell you the origin of trick-or-treating, the jack-o'-lantern, and why the continued theme of witches, ghosts, and demons. Most importantly, this material will explain why you should have nothing to do with Halloween. Our booklet is offered free of charge with no undesired follow-up and no obligation, so stay tuned, and at the end of this program, we will tell you how to receive a free copy of The Truth About Halloween. So far, we have heard about the origins of Halloween. We have seen that it dates back to ancient traditions of Celts and Druids who observed Samhain, a dreaded time of year which focused on witches, ghosts, demons, and the Lord of the Dead. We have also seen that Samhain was adopted by the Holy Roman Empire as the apostate church attempted to convert the masses. But why did our modern celebration retain so much of the evil traditions associated with Samhain? Why do people dress up in hideous costumes and carve frightening images in pumpkins and go out trick-or-treating? As was discussed earlier, pagans believed that spirits came out of the grave and roamed the earth on the eve of November 1st. This is the same evening that we know as October 31st. Their beliefs led to all kinds of superstitious behavior. As Francis Weiser wrote, our pagan forefathers kept several cult of the dead rites at various times of the year. One of these periods was the great celebration at the end of fall and the beginning of winter, around November 1st. Together with the practices of nature and demon lore, fires, masquerades, fertility cults, they also observed the ritual of the dead with many traditional rites. One of the traditional rites of those pagans was masquerading as hideous creatures and handing out or receiving treats. And the reason for such activities was not for fun and games. It's important to realize that this was a dreaded time of year. It was thought that supernatural beings could actually harm people. As Alexander MacGregor wrote, "It was the night for the universal walking about of all sorts of spirits, fairies, and ghosts, all of whom had liberty on that night." Because of this superstitious belief that ghosts and goblins and demons had liberty on that night, the rituals invented were not for fun. They believed it was to avoid calamity. Fearing injury, the townsfolk did many things to appease the spirits, even trying to trick them into leaving the people alone. As Weiser continued, another and more important tradition is the Druidic belief that during the night of November 1st, demons, witches, and evil spirits roamed the earth in wild and furious gambols of joy to greet the arrival of their season. They had their fun with the poor mortals that night, frightening, harming them, and playing all kinds of mean tricks. The only way, it seemed, for scared humans to escape the persecution of the demons was to offer them things that they liked, especially dainty food and sweets. Or in order to escape the fury of these horrible creatures, a human could disguise himself as one of them and join in their roaming. In this way, they would take him for one of their own, and he would not be bothered. That is what people did in ancient times, and it is in this very form the custom has come down to us, practically unaltered, as our familiar Halloween celebration, the horrible masks of demons and witches, the disguise in strange and unusual gowns, the ghost figures, the frightening gestures and words, the roaming through the streets at night, the pranks played, and finally the threatening demand of a trick or treat. You see, many believed that evil spirits would leave you alone if you tricked them by dressing up to look like a kindred monster. Others thought that frightening costumes might scare demons away. And this is where the modern activity of making costumes and trick-or-treating came from. Now, the treat part of the tradition came from attempts to buy off these evil spirits. Why, some actually believed that spirits would possess animals that night and that imprisoned beings could be released by giving treats of food to those that were possessed. And because of a belief that spirits could possess animals and people, all callers to any particular home was given a treat as a safety measure. Why, the Encyclopedia of Superstition states this: "It was believed by Catholics of medieval times, and the superstition became general throughout Europe, that on this day the dead returned for a time and lingered among their living kin. Throughout the country, as late as the end of the 19th century, soul cakes were baked and given to all callers at a house. Peasants spent the day a-souling, that is, proceeding from one house to another, gathering cakes. From this practice developed the tradition of trick-or-treating. You see, if a particular home did not present a treat to all callers, they would risk a dirty trick being played on them. And in this way, the fearful practice simply became a form of extortion by those seeking free food. Sadly, what was once something greatly feared has morphed into child's play today. You see, it began as something dreaded and evil, but people now consider it good, clean fun. But you need to realize Halloween's relatively new packaging does not change what is inside. Sam Hain was evil then, and Halloween is still evil today. Why, consider the beloved jack-o'-lantern. A trademark of Halloween is carved pumpkins that are lighted with candles. Why, some designs are ornate and quite clever. However, this tradition is also of heathen origin. As Reader's Digest points out, the Halloween lantern, made from a hollowed-out pumpkin or turnip with a candle inside, is a relic from the days when food offerings were made to spirits of the dead. In ancient times, the Celts of Europe carved frightening faces into potatoes and turnips, and they put small candles inside of them in order to scare away wandering spirits on the eve of Samhain. These lanterns would often be placed outside of homes in the hopes that ghosts would see them and not attempt to enter the dwelling. Immigrants brought this tradition to America, and they soon found that pumpkins made wonderful jack-o'-lanterns. While this tradition might seem like harmless entertainment today, we must realize that its history actually unveils a wicked past. Why, the family activity of carving a sinister face into a pumpkin and placing a light inside is nothing short of participating in pagan rites. And shocking as this may seem, we are actually following in the footsteps of pagans. Why, evil inspired their activities then, and it continues to inspire the same activities today. Now, some people might say, well, we don't dress up as ghosts or vampires or demons, and we instead choose more wholesome costumes such as a Jedi Knight or Cinderella. Why, they may even say we don't carve scary pumpkins, but, we carve ones that appear to be friendly and inviting. Others choose to forego the traditional activities altogether, but they still will have a costume party, and they call it a fall festival. But we need to realize that this is the same type of thing the Catholic Church did in attempting to change a pagan practice into something holy. And we cannot take something that is evil and wrap it up in pretty paper and then call it good. And if you change the activities and even the name of Samhain, why, it's still evil at its core. In other words, you cannot take something as evil and try to call it good. As God warned us, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Ladies and gentlemen, Halloween is a dark and evil holiday. It has never been and never will be an observance that God will accept, no matter how people might try to dress it up. Why, think about it. What do skeletons, ghosts, and demons have to do with decent moral values? What does the Lord of the Dead have to do with the God of Christianity? Why, the symbols of Halloween are dark and sinister. The themes include witchcraft, death, and demons. And does this imagery of this holiday reflect anything that is wholesome and pure? Would Christ appreciate the celebration of Halloween today? Would he say that it's acceptable as long as nobody dresses up as witches or monsters, and as long as you call it a fall festival instead? Absolutely not. In fact, the Bible condemns such practices. In Exodus 20, God outlined his great moral code found in 10 ethical commandments. And the first commandment states that his people should have no other gods, that is, respect no other thing above God and his way of life. And God even commanded mankind to abstain from inquiring after other religions. Consider the following words. Take heed to yourself that you are not ensnared to follow them, that is, the pagans. Whatever I command you, be careful to observe it. You shall not add to it, nor take away from it. The clear instructions from the Bible is that we are not to adopt holidays and traditions of ungodly, immoral people and then try to call them good. We cannot confiscate wicked observances and claim them for Christ's sake. By speaking through the prophet Jeremiah, God admonished his people to refrain from learning pagan ways, and he indicated that there would be severe consequences for those who choose the dark path. Thus says the Eternal, learn not the way of the heathen. They are altogether brutish and foolish, but the Eternal is the true God. He is the living God and an everlasting King. At his wrath the earth shall tremble, and the nations shall not be able to abide his indignation. God's words are clear. Pagan practices, including Halloween, are to be entirely rejected. He not only forbids inquiring after false gods and practicing heathen ways, he declares that there will be perilous consequences for violating his commandments. Ladies and gentlemen, despite what you might think, take this as a warning. Christ is coming, and he is not going to be happy with the way people are behaving. Why, most believers like to portray Christ as a soft-spoken, effeminate, long-haired man who would not hurt a fly. But nothing could be further from the truth. The Bible clearly states that Christ did not have hair like a woman, It states that he was not physically attractive, and though he is merciful, it states that he is a leader of the armies of heaven. And the scriptures say that he will return and he is going to strike the nations, and tens of millions will perish because of their immorality and their toleration of wickedness. Notice what the Bible says will happen in the not too distant future. Behold, the Lord comes with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment on all. And the armies in heaven, clothed in fine linen, white and clean, they follow him on white horses, and out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he should strike the nations. A fire devours before them, and behind them a flame burns. Before them the people writhe in pain. All faces are drained of color. Why, the Eternal gives voice before his army, for his camp is very great. For strong is the one who executes his word. For the day of the Eternal is great and very terrible. Who can endure it? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a question that all of us need to consider. Christ is coming. Will we be able to endure it? You see, a form of judgment is going to come upon all people. Are we trying to live ethically as God would have us live? Why, this world has vastly turned to immoral and wicked behavior, and yet our modern politically correct atmosphere, it's quick to call evil good. To the Celts and other pagans, Samhain became a name for the Lord of the Dead. And who is the Lord of the Dead? Because it's certainly not God. As Christ stated, God is not the God of the dead, but of the living. You see, the God of the Bible is the God of the living, and those who want to live must choose to live by his moral standards and serve the living God, not Samhain, the Lord of the Dead. And I hope this has helped you to learn that Halloween is a trick. It is not a treat. It is a trick that has been played on the unsuspecting people of the world by the devil, who is deceiving the vast majority and has deceived them since the beginning of human history. Why, you need to know more about this subject, ladies and gentlemen, and you can know more. To help you, Quest for Truth has produced an informative free booklet. The Eternal Church of God publishes a variety of free literature to help people understand the truth of the Bible and the destiny of the earth. Today, we would like to offer you the booklet titled The Truth About Halloween. It will explain exactly how Samhain became Halloween, and yet it still retains the dark symbols and themes of fear and death. It will explain the origin of trick-or-treating and jack-o'-lanterns. Most importantly, our booklet will explain why you should have nothing to do with Halloween. Our literature is always offered free of charge with no undesired follow-up. So stay tuned, and in just a few seconds we will tell you how you can receive a free copy of The Truth About Halloween. For now, this is Terry Moore saying thanks for watching.
No one knows the day.